It might surprise you that I'm not an HR expert, I'm not an employer branding expert. However, I do know something unique about unrecognized resources that can help you. It can, I believe, be a game changer. We heard a lot about people want to be recognized, people want to feel seen, they want to feel valued. But how can we do that, right? And as was said before, it's not in a ping pong table, it's not in the yoga, it can be fun, it's nice to have a break from your stressful work, but there must be more to give people authentic sense of recognition. I'm going to prove you it's possible. But before that, let's do a question. I believe in your gift bag, your goodie bag, you have two things we're going to need. One is a shaker or tambourine, I think you call it. The other one is a jar, which inside the jar there is a light. Now you need to follow my instructions in order to make it work for the light. You need to turn off the lid. In the bottom of the lid is a little shift you can turn from off to on. And then if you close it, the light will work. And if you put your hand on the sensor on the top, I already see some successful ones, so if you don't manage, ask your neighbor. If it turns off, you just put your hand on the sensor, and then it thinks it's dark, so then the light will turn on. I'm going to test if you understood my instructions and if it works. First question, very simple. I'm curious. Oh, this is actually very beautiful to see this. I'm curious, and yes, I would say yes is the light, no is the shaker, okay? Is this the first time you're attending an employer branding summit? So light for yes, and the shaker for no. Very nice. I think it's like maybe 70, 60 yes, 40, something no. The second question, I hope, but this is my question to you. Did you already gain some insights from the previous speakers that you're excited to try out in your own company for your own challenges? Well, this is very beautiful. I mean, maybe you feel like you should say yes, but I hope it's authentic. And it's, by the way, a big credit for the organizers. It's very nice. Another question about the people around you, because I believe you cannot just learn from the speakers, you can also learn from each other, because you're all dealing with similar challenges. So my question to you is, did you already talk with someone you don't know yet? Ah, this is also very good. And you know, those shakers, I think you're very honest. And now in the lunch after my talk, I'll invite you to also network with each other. But I see you already did a good job. All right, now, about my work. I already actually made a bit the promise. The promise is that you can use unrecognized resources for employer branding to gain more value from the same workers without paying those workers more, okay? So it's a promise, and at the end of the talk, I hope I fulfilled my promise and I convinced you. But before diving into what are unrecognized resources, it might be the first time you hear this term, very shortly about me. I work with an Israeli innovation method, and the method is called TINO. And with TINO, we are able to find unrecognized resources. And I'm doing that already for 13 years. It was actually my first job I got during graduating from my master's. And I'm from the Netherlands. You might already hear it by my accent. But I work also in Brazil, and I run all the projects we do in West Europe. And I hope, by the way, to also bring what we do to East Europe. That's also one of the reasons that I'm here today. Now, I'm going to share with you 2 case studies, but I'm going to do that later because first I need to explain you what is unrecognized knowledge. And by the way, it might be interesting for you to know we apply TINO in all kinds of domains. We work with international companies, including banks. We work with governments, Ministry of Finance in the Netherlands. We're also active in education, so it's really wide. Okay, unrecognized knowledge, I promised you. For this, I need you to use your imagination. I hope you still have a bit of energy left, because this is going to be a metaphorical story. It goes as follows. Imagine a worker or yourself that you are a house, okay? So you're not a person. I'm using a house to describe you as a person. Now, a person has many rooms. You don't just have one room. However, if you look at companies, the main room that companies need and see is the job room. Now, what do we find in the job room? In the job room, you bring all the knowledge and the skills and the network that you need to perform your tasks. This is what they expect you to do, right? You're not going to talk all the day about your dog. You're not going to say that, I don't know, the coffee was much better in your previous job. Maybe you even changed careers, so it would be strange if you keep talking all the time about making videos where now you're dealing with recruitment. So you filter the things that are needed for your job. So this is the job room, and those are the resources you bring there. And how does your company know that they made a good catch, they made the right match? They start with your CV, they interview in the job interview, they ask you questions, and later, of course, they see the results. So not only you filter, you say, okay, these are the things I need for my job room, but also the company is very happy that you made a kind of a pre-selection, and they see that you have the resources it takes. If you don't have them in one moment, they might fire you. Or maybe if you don't feel the match yourself, you might decide to leave. But of course, everybody understands. Go back to this metaphor of a person as a house. We are much more than our job room. We have many rooms in our house, which can be related to family, hobbies, previous jobs, previous experiences. Maybe you love to travel in the holidays. Maybe you studied abroad. I'm curious, unfortunately, we don't have the time, but I would wish to ask a lot of questions already here to see what kind of rooms you have here. By the way, not all the rooms might be fun. Maybe in the past you had debts, but you were able to get out of debts. It's also a room with a lot of knowledge and skills to maybe spend much less money for the things that you need. It's a skill. Now we start to reach the unrecognized knowledge. Because in some of those rooms, I would say many, but for this presentation, let's focus on 2 rooms. In some of those rooms, there are resources, such as knowledge, skills, and network, related to those rooms. So, for example, previous jobs or hobbies, your social life, the people you know. And they're very valuable there, because you needed those skills in the previous jobs. You like to know the people that you maybe have a team sport with, but they're relevant in those rooms. They're not relevant for your job room. So they're here, you use them here, but when you go to the office, there's no need for you to use it. This is very important. You don't need those resources there. Because you don't bring them to your job room, the company doesn't know that you have those resources. And if it still sounds a bit abstract, I'm going to give you a practical example just after this slide. So this is, for example, I have one good friend in Bulgaria. I hope more in the future, but I just started in Bulgaria. Her name is Veselina. So imagine Veselina is here. She has a lot of knowledge from previous jobs. She knows a lot of people, but it's not related to her job. But when she goes to the office, same person goes to the office, she's not bringing those resources there. She doesn't need it. She doesn't need to think about those things. Now what happens, and that makes it unrecognized resource, is that in that company, they see Veselina job room. This is what they see. The skills, for example, related to HR, recruitment, employer branding. They don't see that because Veselina filtered that out. However, and now starts the magic, it's not magic, but it's a huge potential. There might be people in other rooms with other jobs, other departments, other challenges than Veselina. Veselina is doing a great job. She's doing fine. But those white rooms, there are people there that exactly search what Veselina has in those 2 other rooms. Veselina doesn't know that. They also don't know that Veselina is the gate, is the door towards those resources, because they see her as recruitment, or they see her as employer branding. They don't see her as IT expert or security expert. Why that? I'm going to give you an example. So she's filtering it out, and actually the job room filters out that exchange of question, need, and the match with those unrecognized resources. So now, I hope you got the feeling of unrecognized resource, and I promised to make it more tangible. So I have another question for you, because the more I feel you can feel it about your own journey, you also feel it more tangible. I'm curious how many people of you, let's say in the last 2 years, also worked for another company. So you are working less than 2 years in the company you're working now. Yeah, I want to see the lights because it's so much fun. Can we do that? Yeah, I told you it was going to be interactive because I need to keep you with me till you get some new energy and some resources for your stomach. So, the question was, who worked for another company in the last 2 years compared to the company now? Okay, I see you're there are more lights, it just takes a bit of time. You see, it's many. And I'm also curious, great, thank you. You can also shake if it's no, it's also a way to communicate. And I'm curious how many of you work for two or more companies at the same time right now. Maybe you're a freelancer, maybe you're a consultant. So the question is, do you work for more than one company? If it's no, you can shake. Give me the shake. Great. Okay. So this example actually perfectly fits to your profile as well. Now, what's the example I would like to give you? Let's go back to you, or to Vesselina in this case. Imagine that before joining this company, she was working for other similar companies. It's quite likely, right? Some people make a career change. It's also common that you move across kind of competitors. But even if she changed, she was in a big company dealing with transportation, and she went to another big company dealing with, I don't know, payment solutions. There are many systems very similar in any company. Just think about your own departments. You have the recruitment, you have IT systems, you deal with security systems for cyber attacks, you deal with, I see here, attract, engage, retain. All those processes, any company should be, but most companies are dealing with that. And around that, there are all kinds of systems. Not only related to HR, it can also be, for example, related to security or database, how to store the data. Now, I want to give you the example of unrecognized knowledge here. Imagine that Vesselina, when she was in her previous job, and she was working there, she was doing fine. Any person, you saw a lot in other departments, because you hear stories in the canteen, you have to collaborate. So you all the time hear stories. What is not working with the IT? Apps that malfunction. Maybe you have a card for the door to open, but it always doesn't work. So then you do a nice wave to the guard. He lets you in, or you exchange cards with your colleague. So there are all kinds of systems. And this is the point, not related to your job, that you also gain knowledge about. You see things. You get information. Now, what happens if Vesselina goes to the new company? Of course, they might ask her things about her work. They might say, how did you deal with HR related to this? How did you deal with the recruitment related to that? But they're not going to say, but what about the IT system? Or what about the security? Now, I'm not saying that Vesselina is an expert, but she might have pieces of valuable information. Now, you might say, but why to do this work? I can just ask the supplier, do you have a good system? But of course, the supplier is going to say, I have the best system. If you buy all the features, they already use it. Here we have a nice presentation. But do you really trust the seller? He's in the biggest conflict of interest. He wants to sell you. Of course, he's going to say it's great. I'm not saying don't trust anybody. I'm just saying maybe you could ask Vesselina, who already is in your company. You already have a coffee with her and lunch. And you can say, by the way, in your previous job, just 1-2 years ago, do you know this system? Did you use it in your company? And she will be willing and happy to share. I will prove to you later why she will be so happy to share. Second practical example. Be ready with the lights now, okay? Because otherwise I lose time. So, anybody does a team sport. So do you do a team sport? Shake if you don't. Light if you do. Great. By the way, music, if you're in a choir, it's also team sport, I would say. So, very nice. But, this is the easy one. Anybody likes to go out to have a beer? Anybody has friends that you meet, in the weekend? I'm sure all of you would raise the light. We all, at least I hope we all have some sort of social life. Now, what's my point with the social life is that one resource, unrecognized research, you can find directly in Vesselina. But you can also find unrecognized resources in people that Vesselina knows. Because maybe she has friends, which is very common, that are a bit similar to her. Maybe they both studied HR, right? So they work in other companies in very similar positions. Now, they also use, again, the IT systems and the security systems and the database and even, I don't know, how to deal with the parking. If we have more and more people because we used to work remote, we shrank the offices, but now we want them to come back, but we don't have enough parking. How to deal with that solution? How do they deal with that solution? They might already thought about it. It saves you time. It saves you money. You don't have to contract a consultant that says, I'm expert in, I don't know, parking solutions for employees. You could just ask them. And through Vesselina, you could get to that information. But Vesselina, and this is a very important point, Vesselina is not going to say that to you by herself. Maybe after this talk, but very likely not. Why not? Because she was not contracted to talk about parking solutions. She was not contracted to talk about IT, security systems, I don't know, anything. She was only asked to talk about HR or about employer branding. So she doesn't think it's relevant. It would be strange if she would all the time talk about other things. That's why she will not share it. It will not happen naturally. Actually, people who do that naturally often are not appreciated by the company. They say, oh, stop talking about this or that. We don't know how to deal with that. But there's a second reason, because I don't want to put everything on Vesselina. There's a second reason why it's not exchanged naturally. Companies ask, don't share it. Companies say, stick to your responsibility. Imagine that I'm contracted and the first day I arrive, I said, hey guys, security, let's talk. Hey, IT, let's talk. Hey, parking, let's talk. People say, Maya, you were contracted to do this. What are you doing? So we don't have a system for that. It's not because we're stupid, by the way. This is all related to efficiency. We want to be efficient. We want to know this is the dentist. Even in our personal life, I have a problem with my teeth. Where's the dentist? I want to find him. I want to know what is his specialization. Imagine the dentist would say, I know about IT, I know about security. And I go, man, I'm just searching a dentist. So it's great. We need it. The question is, can we complete it? I didn't rehearse that slogan, but I could use it. It rhymes. It works. But we're here today to talk about employer branding, so I think I should make a link to employer branding. But maybe you already feel where I'm going to. But there are two great gains if you would do this more. The first one, before going to employer branding, you can make better decisions. Think again about how much money companies spend to buy knowledge that many times is under the highest level of conflict of interest, right? If you, for example, ask a consultant, they have a conflict of interest. If you consider to buy a new system and you talk with a seller, they have a conflict of interest. Where there's so much information available of people that will be very happy to share with you, they will not ask money for it, and I'll promise I'll prove that to you later. And it can be a second opinion. It doesn't mean you should say to the seller, I don't believe you. You can think that. I wouldn't say it. I would just be nice. But later, also talk with a few people around Vesselina and do the second opinion. And maybe the seller was very honest. And then you will know that next time, you also like to work with this seller. So anyway, it's a win. But we're not so much here to talk about the decision-making, though I think it's also relevant to you. We are here for the employer branding. Now, the reason, and I said it at the beginning, the reason why this is such a powerful tool for employer branding is because it makes people feel more recognized. Simply because you say, hey, Vesselina, Most of the time, you are your job room. We talk with you because of your job room. We contracted you. We pay you for that. But we know you are much more, and I'm sure you already do that. It's not, maybe you send them a birthday card, maybe you congratulate them when they became a mother, so I'm not saying that nobody sees that. But the company can take much more from it, and she will like it, because she feels more valuable. Suddenly she feels she's not just this, she's also this and this and this, and it can be valuable to the company. So it's not just a gimmick. It's not to say, oh, I saw you got married, very nice. Of course it's nice, but it's not, there's no value exchange. But if the person feels that they really contribute something, it gives them a huge sense of recognition. Now, why does it, I told you already why it doesn't happen naturally. How can we make it happen? For that, you need two things. It's actually, in a way, it's not a list of 20 things, it's two things. Two things to remember. First of all, you need the mindset. Why you need a mindset? I will explain. Anything you see around in terms of information is what we call push-based. What does it mean? The person thinks it's relevant to share. This is what we're used to see. Even I can give you an example of myself. I'm here on the stage, like the other speakers. They filtered, just like your workers, they filtered what they think is relevant to share. So I made the slides, I wrote down the notes. I'm not sharing things that I don't think are relevant to you, but maybe there are some other rooms in my house that some of you would love to hear, because you search for that, but I don't know, I filtered it out. Everything you see, everything you read, everything you see on social media, everything you're going to exchange in the lunch, it's information that you think is relevant to share. This is what we see around. So that means that when we search information, what we receive already has been filtered by the person based on is it relevant or not. So what is the mindset that we need to change? We need to understand that there still might be more valuable resources that the person has, but he or she is simply not aware of that. So this is the change in the mindset that we need. Now this, though it sounds somehow intuitive, I think it sounds intuitive, the house, people say, of course, I know I'm more. I talk with thousands of people, but the question is why it doesn't happen naturally, if it's so intuitive. And that is because there's maybe nothing more difficult than to change a mindset. I'm sure in your company, if you try, you can change the color of the wall, it's very hard to change a mindset. A method forces you to change it. And I want to show something about why it works, why people will share with you the information. And we already got the question from Chris in the morning, so I will not repeat that one. He asked you about who already opened his social media. So I'm not going to ask you that one, but I want to ask you the following question. Who thinks that people, I will not say you because maybe it's confronting, who thinks that people spend too many hours on social media per day? You can use the light. Yes, so you see, it's a lot of people. In the Netherlands, we see that youngsters, like high school age, spend sometimes between 6 and 12 hours on social media per day, 6 and 12. That's like an average workday, right? It's like you have 2 jobs. It's crazy. But why do they do that? Why? Because there's a kind of drive behind, right? It's before the addiction. Addiction is because you search something, but you find it in the wrong thing. What do people search? We believe people search, of course, is curiosity. They want to know what's happening. This is in our nature. We want to know, is the lion coming? Are we safe? Because maybe the other village knows that there's a lion coming. It's really kind of evolutionary, but there's something deeper as well. We want to feel recognized. We want to feel valuable. Why it gives you a dopamine shot if you see a heart, or you gain 2 followers. Maybe I gained today 10 followers in my LinkedIn and I will be less. Yes, it was a successful talk. Why? Because it makes me feel valuable. So my promise to you is that people want this. People want to collaborate with you. They want to share. Not if they have a conflict of interest. If you ask a salesperson, tell me all your contacts, let me know who is in your network. You will say, but this is my asset. This is what I make my money with. But if you find the contacts that are not relevant, for example, to Veselina, she's not a consultant on IT or security, so there's no conflict of interest. I don't know, how are we with time? I'm just checking the organizers. Because, you see, 2. I'm so passionate, I could talk forever about it. So we need a method in order to force ourselves to do it. So that's what we do actually with TINO. I'm going to rush it up a little bit because I want to reach the end with you. We call them TIKOs. So we still need the experts. Companies are based on expertise. So that's also why we need the HR, we need the employer branding. Just also use the unrecognized resources. And we call that the TIKO. So if you approach an expert for the unrecognized resources, we say, this is a TIKO for this and this and that. Maybe later I'll use the term, that's why I put it in, because I want to share also with you the examples. Now, one of the examples I would like to share, very short, is we were asked by an international mobility company. They build and manage railroads, highways, airports. And they had a typical big company issues. Actually, any company will have issues related to risk or efficiency. They want to innovate. But what did we do? And they were excited about this kind of different approach. We trained a team of their own workers in the method, so they do it. They get ongoingly challenges from, for example, the directors, and then they search unrecognized resources through their workers, through the workers of their suppliers, maybe their customers, maybe even candidates that were rejected. They like it because they have a way to stay in contact. Maybe later, if you have an open position, they feel that they have a chance to show again that they might fit. So it can be any person around or inside the organization. And here there's a very nice connection to HR, because you have the database of the people. So if the TINO searches a person that might have resources in this or direction, unrecognized resources, you can say, oh, I know, I can see who worked there in those other companies, or I can see who was in England for 4 years, because you can see it in the CVs. You have a gold mine. It's like you have the address book. And we work together with the HR in that way. We saved a lot of money and people like it. Imagine the maintenance worker every day, very practical work, very repetitive. Suddenly this TINO team comes with a strategic question from the board, and this maintenance worker first will say, but why do you ask me? I'm from the maintenance. But they will say, no, but you see this and this and this every day. And he's like, wait, you're right. The feeling it gives him, he will talk about it every birthday after to his family. Imagine they came to me and it's authentic, please. It has to be authentic, but it is because it's useful. Second example, we were asked by the Dutch National Police to improve their reputation. This is a very clear example of employer branding. I don't know how it's in Bulgaria. Unfortunately, in my country, the police is less and less respected, mainly by youngsters and young adults. It also creates a problem of recruiting new workers. People are like, no, I don't want to work there, it's stupid. Well, we need them. So what did we do? We actually connect youngsters with professionals from the police. They interview them, but they don't interview them about the job room. It's not like, okay, what time do you start? How does a gun work? How do you arrest someone? This is the obvious. They talk with them about the other rooms in their house. What was your journey? What did you experience? How do you deal with hardship? And then you see that the youngsters listen, because it's like, hey, wait, this person is much more than I thought. And the police professionals, they're like, wait, I am much more than just, running in the street or doing very boring paperwork, because sometimes this is also part of this job. So here you have people that for 40 years work so hard, but never got this sense of recognition. And now they're seen as a house, and they will remember that. I can say much more, but then I might fight also with you, because I can imagine you're hungry, you're ready for lunch, but I'm really there. So I mentioned that I already shared it a bit before. I believe that HR is a perfect match for this approach because you're already expert in finding the recognized resources. You know how to find the people that have the right skills, the knowledge, the network for what is expected for the job room. You just need to add a process to also, it's like a kind of a Google that the person will say, hey, HR, we have a problem with this. Can you help me to find a profile of a person that has connections with that, but not from the job room? And you have that information. You sit on, in a way, you sit on the gold mine. So you could be great ambassadors to complete this mindset, to complete using the available resources. And this actually is my last question, and I really hope many lights will go up. I'm curious, do you think, forget about the company, forget about your CEO, I'm talking to you. Do you think, are you excited, and do you think you're ready to do something with this mindset, to go to this more complete analysis and also in a way then to, connect it to the other? I'm distracted because I don't see so many lights. People were preparing. So it's very nice. And please, you could shake. Maybe people don't want to offend me if you say you're not ready. And I was also prepared for not seeing a 100% score, and I'm totally fine with that. But I do want to invite you, both to the people who said yes and to the people who said no, or didn't say, but implicitly. Please tell me why. So in the lunch or in the Human app, you can connect to me with me on LinkedIn. Tell me why you think you're ready. Also tell me why you don't think you're ready, or maybe the company is not ready, because actually I also learn a lot from that. Maybe you can see I'm not just standing here because it's my job. It's really my passion to unlock these hidden resources. So also any obstacles you see why this is not possible yet in your domain, I'll be very happy to learn that from you. And that's it. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the day.